Hi, and welcome to another edition of COVID Calls. Thank you, everyone who's been watching these. We're trying to do them every day and getting a lot of different experts every day as well to help us process, I guess, the best way to help us process this new reality we're all living. Today we have a really nice topic and some great guests. So the point is to try and understand how to find inspiration and tragedy. Sorry, how to find inspiration from tragedy and crisis, and how to kind of make the best of the situation we're in. We have someone who is no stranger to crises. Mark Weingard, a big businessman based in Malta. Hi, Mark. How are you doing?
I'm a little businessman in Malta. I'm only like 5'7", but yeah, very good. Thank you.
Very small businessman. We also have Peter Grech, the CEO and founder of Wagon, a brand strategist himself. Hi, Pete. And
hi, guys.
Former boss of mine as well. And we have Emma Hogg as well. Hi, Emma.
Hi.
Emma's psychotherapist. So also we don't just want to talk about businesses here. We want to talk about, if you're struggling with your business right now, or if you've just got bad news, or you're dealing with the anxiety of possibly becoming unemployed by this situation, or even you're just struggling to live with your partner or your family, or all by yourself in this sort of semi-lockdown that we're in, right? So guys, thank you very much for all being on the show. I'm just going to start with Mark. Just a question for Mark to get the discussion going, and then we'll start discussing with the four of us. So Mark, you have a history with crises and tragedy, right? And you've always managed to find personal sort of peace, but also success after these sort of situations. Talk to us a bit about that, and what you think is the most important thing for people to keep in mind in this time.
I think very, very importantly, the most important thing we need to all keep in mind is that this is not a permanent state. That we're in a situation now that we're going to be in for, I don't know, maybe the next 2 months, that we may be in this lockdown situation. And, maybe after that it'll come and go a little bit or whatever. But in a year's time, our lives will be back to normal. Maybe we'll have a different job. Maybe we'll be in a slightly different financial situation. But it's not going to be that this is the way of life for the next 10 years. You're not going to be stuck in your room for the next 10 years. And it's very important that people understand that they're in this situation for a short period of time. Now, let's say we're going to be under lockdown for 2 months. Now, instead of turning around and saying, oh my God, what am I going to do? I'm going to be stuck with my wife. I'm going to just have to be with my kids. There's nothing to do. I'm going to run out of things. You need to look at it from a very different angle. You need to turn around and say to yourself, when you're at work, when you are out there having to do all the normal things that you're doing every day, you have no time to do all the creative things that you want to do. You have no time to catch up on all those reading that you wanted to do, to catch up on the TV series. So we should use this time and look at it as a chance to catch up on things, to catch up with people. Make sure that you speak to your friends, to your family that you haven't spoken to for a long time. They'll really want to hear from you because everybody's sat in their house on their own. So the important thing is to reach out to people, to actually fill your days.
So Pete, if I can just bring you in on this as well. Obviously, you're a business owner yourself. When you hear something like that, okay, read more, take do some of the things that you've been putting off even creatively, and we've seen loads of people doing that online. Do you have any free time to do that right now, or are you just trying to deal with the survival of a business? And how does that how difficult is that?
Well, I think that's an interesting statement, because as Mark was speaking, I definitely agree with everything that Mark was saying, but I was really jealous about the fact that I haven't had this time to get back into art or reading. Haven't been this busy for the last probably 12 years. I mean, 14 years ago I started Wagon, and that is probably the last time I had this amount of intensity of actually just focusing on the business. I have managed to be quite disciplined in terms of still being able to wake up early and do my training as I always do, and I definitely have had much more time to spend with my family and my kids. I'm not sure it's quality time because my mind is just racing in survival mode, both from our business, but also, how do I help my clients survive this business, and how do I help my employees? And over and above that, how do we help the broader community? So I think Mark is right. I think the only way, that we can live through this is to obviously keep hope there that this is a temporary state. And I think that Mark is right to say that within, an element of time, and I'm being very careful about how we commit, whether it's 2 months, 8 months, 10 months, we'll see about that. I think we're going to get into a new stage. Yeah, we're going to get into a new stage. And I think what we need to start doing is start to imagine what that new normal could look like, So there is no way of returning back to what we were before. And that's probably a good thing, because probably the way we were before was definitely not the best way we could have been. There's a lot of waste. There was a lot of, I think taking advantage of people's time, taking advantage of people's relationships. I think that was something that we need to get away from. But I think moving forward, I think we need to look and start to understand, what does a new normal look like? What is our position in the market going to be like? And how do we start to build for that? Because I think this could be the time to start strengthening our position in both as people, both as humans, and our relationships with everything else.
So it's interesting that there's already a bit of a difference in opinion in a way, because it's like, are we going, like, do we get excited because, in 10 years time, as Mark said, we're going to be living our lives as normal? Or is it a time to kind of process, listen, maybe some things are never going to be the same again? And Emma, I'd just like to bring you in on this, because obviously that state of uncertainty and unpredictability makes someone anxious, right? Anxiety is something that kicks in immediately, right? The survival, the fight or flight mode, that we often talk about. So how do you reset your brain to be on the right track to be able to sort of maximize or capitalize from this situation instead of just let it bring you down?
That's a really good question. I like both of what Mark and Pete are saying. Mark, in terms of the, things are temporary, and that is true. And remembering that brings you back to a sense of being in the now and being able to handle it. And I like what Pete is saying, in that things won't be the way that they were, because whenever something happens, any kind of trauma, and if you think about this crisis, it's like a trauma on a global scale. So things do change, and things do change forever. And that doesn't necessarily mean bad. There's going to be two sides to it. Like, there's two sides to everything. On a brain level, what happens when we go into a state of trauma is that the baser parts of the brain become very hyperactive. So if we can really simplify the way we understand the brain by breaking the brain into 3 parts. And if you take your hand and you do this, you make a fist. Like, this part represents the reptilian brain. This part represents the mammalian brain. And then this part represents the human brain. Yeah. And the reptilian is responsible for keeping you alive. So it's responsible for heart rate, breathing rate, the fight or flight system. The mammalian brain is responsible for attachment and emotions and noticing fear. And then the human brain is responsible for thinking, forward thinking, creativity, compassion, all the things that make us great at relationships and business.
But how do we take control of our brain in that way? What can we do in the practical terms that would reset us in the right direction?
Okay, so what's important is to switch on your human brain, okay? Because what happens is when these two, with the baser brain, okay, which are responsible for fight or flight, when they go overactive, the human brain switches off. You can call it flipping our lids, okay? And that's when we start to behave in ways that are completely like erratic or irrational. Okay. And so in the moment, what you can do is take deep breaths, take a break, remember what's happening. You can shift your state. You can put on some good music and like dance around, okay? Or go ask for a cuddle, ask for what you need. But then there are also practices, like meditation and therapy and yoga, things that engage your prefrontal cortex, because the prefrontal cortex is the part of the brain that integrates all the different information you're receiving and makes sense of it. And when you can't make sense of what's going on, and what's going on is so weird and has happened so fast, and obviously it's going to put you into this state of uncertainty. When you can't make sense of it, then you're going to start acting out, because you're going to be feeling so uncertain and so not in a good space.
So Mark, if I can just take that to you, I mean, the way I see it, at least, is you can really, you know, look at your world as a hostile place, or you could look at it as a place that is, you know, welcoming and generous and able to and generally positive, right? Obviously, if you're seeing the world in a hostile way, then it's very difficult to not operate in a defensive mode, right? What do you do to kind of keep yourself positive, keep yourself, I mean, you've spoken about the fact that, you know, this is temporary, keep yourself busy, but do you do these practices as well? Mindfulness, I don't know, meditation, is that something that you work on, or is it more of you have more of an organic approach to it?
Well, first of all, I want to come back to what Peter said very quickly, is that I myself am very much like him, in that I've really been working from the minute I wake up till midnight every single day, and I haven't had the time to go off and read and do everything else as well. When I was stating that before, I'm stating that more for the general employees who are out there who are not business people. So I think when the business people have a very different situation, because they are very much trying to keep things afloat right now and trying to work out that balance, whereas I'm talking about the people there who are back home need to sit down and not get too caught up with the helplessness. I think that in life, we should never treat things from a hostile manner. We should sit down and understand that in life, we're always going to have situations that are going to be complicated. And I've always said one thing, and you quite rightfully stated, I've been through a lot of tragedies in my life. But I just want to give you an idea of some people. If you take a 100-year-old lady, okay? The 100-year-old lady would have seen nearly every single person she knows and loves pass away. She may have seen her children go as well before her. She will have seen so much tragedy, but the person who has the most tragedy is the child who was born at one day passes away, because they didn't get to live life at all. The longer that we live life, the longer that we're going to have good things happen to us, and the longer that we're going to have bad things happen to us. Because life is a roller coaster. It isn't always filled with positive things, you know, and the biggest tragedy is to have a short life. So we need to get into our heads the idea that this is a moment, it's not an easy moment, but it's a part of our life.
And it's a part of history as well, eh? I mean, we're living a time which you know, other generations might not have experienced, right?
And we have to sit down and go to ourselves. So in 5 years' time, we're going to sit down and say, do you remember when we were under lockdown and we did this and we did that? And we'll actually have some fun memories of what happened back then. And I think it's really important that we don't sit down and just go, oh my God, this is terrible. What am I going to do? What's happening with my life? We have to sit down and go, take it all in. Yes, our lives have changed. Yes, we've got to deal with different issues. And yes, maybe next year I don't have my job. Maybe I've got less money in the bank account. And you can start maybe seeing that, oh, well, how's this going to affect things? The digital economy is getting bigger, which it is. Right now, the digital economy is growing because people are ordering more online. There's a lot more happening in that world. So what you're going to see with what's happening today is actually, although certain businesses, like traditional businesses, like manufacturing, may go backwards, you're going to see certain businesses actually be accelerated because of what's happening today.
So let me bring Pete into that for a second, and then talk to us a bit about your digital project as well that you're working on. But Pete, like from a perspective of brands and companies that might be trying to find the opportunity here, not just you know, survive the crisis, but there is certainly an opportunity in terms of digital, right? I'm sure that lots of businesses are transitioning online. I think one of the perks is being able to order good food finally online and get it delivered.
Yeah, and I think as Mark was saying, is, you know, there's going to be there's a big growth in the digital space, and I think what we're going to be doing as well is we're going to be creating a series of long-term habits, you know, which are being formed by force. Okay, so effectively, with our backs against the wall, with the fact that we cannot go into shops, with the fact that we cannot do any of the old retail therapy, we're going to be forced to be doing that from what we're calling now the stay-home economy. And the reality is that this is a huge opportunity for new players to come into the market with a much, much better digital experience. I was seeing a really good post on LinkedIn a couple of days ago. So what was the main push for your digital transformation? Was it A, CEO, B, CTO, or C, COVID-19? And in reality, it is COVID-19. The fact that so many people who've been putting on the back burner digital transformations, putting on the back burner, I'll never be able to sell online. I mean, I've seen clients of mine within the space of 2 weeks, all putting back everything on the back burner. Yeah, we'll go digital one day. They had to do it, and they had to do it now. Yeah. And now, as we can see, and as we all became, very, very quickly digital shoppers without, even if we didn't want to, automatically now we're going to start to choose, this online shop is much better than that online shop. This delivery is much better than that delivery. And so the whole discussion has been changed completely. So there are huge opportunities for people to look in the whole sense of brand experience. And even if we just
habit, it's very difficult to change that habit, right? Once you get into the habit of ordering certain things online, and then you benefit from the convenience, the efficiency, and the things that will outlast this crisis, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And beyond that as well, I think it is a real opportunity for brands to look out in really sensing how they can be human once again. How can they reach out to their own audiences? How they can reach out to their own people. And I've seen some really interesting stuff happen, even in the financial services world. I got an SMS from my bank on yesterday. I got an SMS from the bank. Typical, the classic SMS coming from the bank saying, "Hey, your loan repayment is due in a couple of days. Please make sure you have funds." And that was a standard message, but followed up. But if for any reason, you cannot make good for your payments this month, just speak to us and we'll see what we can do about it. And for me, that was, you were there when I needed cash and you were there to lend me the money, but now you're also there to help me and to support me along the way. And I think it is in these little moments that we can create even stronger relationships with our customers.
What about our teams, Pete? Very quickly, I know you guys are working remotely. You made the transition quite quickly as well. Is it difficult to maintain the atmosphere, the esprit de corps, the vibe and the feeling of an office culture like Brandwagon is quite famous for as well?
Look, it's definitely been different, okay? But we've managed to retain a number of the things that we used to do before. So we've still managed to have stand-up meetings. We used to do them once a week. Now we do them 3 times a week. So every Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 9 o'clock, everybody clocks in on our Zoom call, and you've got 37 people, zooming in, and everybody's trying to, kind of boost everybody else on. I've seen a huge growth in a number of our employees who've seen, the reason that they had to step up. And before, when we had people, who were literally just waiting to get stuff onto their desks and delivering, based on a brief. Now it's people inventing new briefs. Now it's people, reaching out. Hey, Pete, I had this idea. Hey, why don't you do this? Hey, I saw you were doing that. And, within a couple of days, we've managed to come up with so much, innovative stuff that, in the past we would have kind of held back with. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, we launched a campaign with you guys, get your bare bones digital platform online shop within 10 days for less than 2,000 euros. I mean, we're a company that used to sell much more expensive websites. And now all of a sudden we've managed to come up with a system that we can turn them around. Yeah. We've come up with ways, we've made a 1 hour a day, every day at 3 o'clock where, a bunch of us are just available just to help anybody who's got any issue. If their company is about to go bankrupt, hey, help me out. What can I do? What are the opportunities?
And this is really nice because I think it's really important for businesses to show solidarity with each other, right? With understanding the market and the situation the whole market is in and responding to that. Emma, you've been working at home remotely for more than 3 years, right?
Yeah.
But I'm sure you've got lots of clients who are speaking to you today about the challenges that they're facing with working at home or struggling with these thoughts. What kind of things are you hearing from people? Is it difficult to stand your partner or your children at this point? What are the frequently asked questions?
Different stuff, like stuff from overeating and just trying to find the goodness in it. I mean, like something that Pete's mentioning, like I just love the resourcefulness that comes out of people in this time, and like So I work a lot with clients on how they can be most resourceful, how they can continue to deliver value to their clients, even in this situation. You know, how to...
We're losing you a bit, I think.
Yeah.
Hold on, Emma. I'll just bring you back.
Find...
I'll just bring you back a bit later. What's to bring it back to you? Tell us a little bit about the platform you've started to help solidarity with businesses as well.
Yeah, well, I have to say that what happened with the crisis, every time we've gone into a major crisis, and as you say, it's happened to me 3 times. In Indonesia, we created a center which now makes prosthetic limbs after I lost my girlfriend in a terrorist explosion. And after the tsunami, I set up an organization called Tie Together, which brought together all the different NGOs and helped them not duplicate their work and make sure that everybody from the relief effort received the right amount of money, and some people didn't get 2 lots and some people got nothing. But what we decided was, here in Malta, it's a very different situation today, because when you have a disaster in the past, it was a disaster where it was in one country or affected one set of people. But this is a disaster that's affecting the whole world. So I wanted to create something where we could come together in Malta as a community and to work together as a community and bring Malta together, and to find a way that we could open up to the community a list of things that they could do. Because one thing that really worries me from this whole thing is that people will sit at home and go slightly crazy because they don't know what to do. They will go mad and they'll get upset, they'll get anxious. And I think the most important thing is that we need to find ways to fill their time, and we need to make sure that people sit there and do things with their lives. That's the most important thing. And so I thought, by creating Malta Together, which is a website which is going to list, it already has over 200 different initiatives on there. So there's online language classes, there's online exercise classes, there's classes for wine, there's all different things that you can go and do. You can go and study or whatever else. Then there's a lot of resources telling you how to get your food online, telling you how to, if you need to buy any meat or anything else, how to get hold of it if you don't know how to get your gourmet products today. There's all things with beauty products and everything else. So it's a resource for everything you need. The second thing that's on there is helplines and counseling. And we have offered on there lots of different people who are doing counseling. So you can go on there, and if you've got an issue, you can look for a counselor who may be able to help you. Or if you've got a question to ask, there's lots of helplines. So we have tried to create an online resource, and that resource was launched. And today we've launched the second version of it, and we have 200 initiatives on there. What's very important is that we get 500 initiatives on there. So the message I want to really come out now is that please come on and use the site. So if you've got kids or teenagers and you don't know what to do, you can use the site now to go and see what they can be doing. But if you've got some idea, you know, for example, I've just heard 2 people talking today, both of these people here. And one of them saying, I've got a thing that people can have a business for €2,000 to go online. I want to see that on Malta Together, so that people can find it all in one place. If you're doing counseling, I want to see that on Malta Together, because it's very important that we get all the information in one place, because it's a different world now. And this website we're creating, there's no advertising on it whatsoever, 0. It's totally free to use. And it is literally bringing all the stuff you need to know while you're in lockdown on one place. Now, probably now we've got 20% of it. Hopefully within a week or so, we can have 100% of it, or 80 or 90%. Right. Before I go, just one other thing. Today, we've also launched our first competition, okay? And we're doing a creative writing competition, okay? So people, when they're at home, if they've got nothing to do, whether they're children, whether they're teenagers, whatever age group, they can come in and write a short story, and they can send it to us. And we're going to give out cash prizes at the end of next week. We're also going to be launching art competitions, and we're going to be launching short video competitions as well. So we're going to get people at their home doing things. And when
Mark, I mean, obviously you found a creative outlet in this, and you're creating a creative outlet for other people. I just wanted to bring Emma back on because we had some issues with her with the sound and video earlier. Emma, are you still there, or have the issues become worse? They have. Let's see. Okay. Pete, what do you think about that? How are you helping your clients ride through this? What are you managing besides the online solution you spoke of? What do you think are the pressing points that they're experiencing? And do you think the government measures being proposed have helped? Are they enough? Have they been enough for your business, for example?
Ouch, there's a lot of good questions there. I'm not sure which one to answer first.
Let's start with the business measures, just to give a sense of that as well.
Well, I think first of all, kudos to Mark for setting up the Malta Together. I think that's a really great initiative. And I think that is what the whole spirit of everything should be. I think if you look at the terms Malta Together, I think this is what we need to be looking at. And I think it's no secret, the fact that the initiatives that the government has come up with have been great for some. They haven't been sufficient for others. Unfortunately, we happen to be in a case where we're not probably getting any sufficient support to help and support the state that we're in. And I think more than anything else, because obviously it's very easy to say, yeah, we're expecting more, and obviously everybody expects more. I think there's also a sort of sense of reality where the fact that the amount of money that's being offered as support is so negligible that it barely covers anything substantial in terms of the type of workforce that we currently have. And I think more than that, I think it's a bit of a blow to business confidence. And I think this is the big issue that we need to really attack here. I think it is great to say, yes, of course we're going to keep on working hard. Yes, of course we're going to try and come up with innovative ideas to keep on supporting our clients, to keep on supporting. But the reality is, I felt that for the last 14 years, I've had a silent partner in my business, which was the government, who was always very much, eager to take the 35% tax that we were paying. But effectively now that I need, support and help, where is my partner? So I think enough can be said about the fact that we would have expected much more support. And I think more than support, I think it's a matter of boosting business confidence. If there isn't business confidence, then people cut back. And we've started to see straight away, some of our clients canceling jobs, not on the basis of the fact that they are specifically and directly related to the tourism industry and to industries which have potentially been, under some sort of, closure by force. But effectively, unless the government shows some innovative, ways of being able to really kick off the industry again, and it's not going to come from, from people earning 800 euros a month. I think that confidence is going to come from people who are earning much more than that. If they're not confident in spending, if they're not confident in buying any of the gourmet meals that Mark was talking about, or any of the travel restaurants, I think that automatically creates a cascade of perception, and we're in the business of perception.
In fact, I think a lot of the government measures are intended to help those businesses that have been completely shut down, right? But obviously, the businesses that have been completely shut down leave a spin-off effect on businesses like yours and mine, for example, that rely on those sort of businesses spending advertising money, for example.
Yeah, of course, and
then there are the other people who make money from events or other things. If everyone stops spending and everyone stops, is in the same situation, then it just becomes like you said, a bit of a domino effect, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think, as I said, it is a lot about business confidence. It's a lot about human confidence. And yes, this is going to be a lull for 2 months, possibly under lockdown. It's definitely going to be a lull in the business for a much more significant period of time. I think we're looking at, probably the 8 to the next 11 months where we're going to be feeling this. I think it's also an opportunity for us to revisit what we can do. I think what we're doing right now is taking stock and trying to understand, okay, what is the scenario right now? How far can we survive this in the current state of play? But more than that, I'm getting, the biggest confidence I'm getting is in speaking to my clients and trying to help them come up with another way. And the reality is, if I listen to a client of mine and give him some ideas, that automatically boosts my confidence, say, okay, there is a way of moving forward. And I think as leadership,
keeping in touch with other people as well, right? I just really want to get to Emma before her connection.
Her internet goes.
I switched it. So I don't know what happened there. Sometimes it's fine, sometimes it's not.
Emma, just really quickly, what do you tell someone today who is really, really struggling with being positive or optimistic in this climate? What could you say to help give them that inspiration?
I think one of the biggest game changers in shifting mood is staying with the mood as it is, in the sense of it's okay to not feel positive. I think that you're speaking to three people who are used to practicing resourcefulness and resilience and mindfulness and stuff like that. But like, we're human. It's okay to be affected by this, and even though we practice resilience and resourcefulness, that doesn't mean we're not being affected. It doesn't mean we haven't had our moments where we experience anxiety and we get freaked out and we wonder what's going to happen, and we get angry at our partners, even though in reality we're not angry at our partner. We're just frustrated by the situation or whatever. We're all affected. We're all human. And so yes, it's important to be positive, and it's important to have like a morning routine and to keep yourself active 100%. But it's also okay to be uncertain, to be anxious, and to be upset, and to cry. Like something beautiful that has come out of that I've experienced in myself in the past couple of weeks is sadness. And it's in a way, it's so nice to feel sad again. I hadn't felt sad in ages, and I'm like crying, and it's nice. So I think that's it's just okay to be where you are.
Yeah. What do you say to that, Mark? The sort of living with the state that you're in, and kind of embracing that, and then trying to kind of work your way out of it.
Every day is a roller coaster. I think that. And most of the time, I think I am naturally an incredibly positive person and find ways to bounce. But for example, on Friday night, I got 2 phone calls. Like one at 10:30 from my friend telling me that his father-in-law was in hospital with COVID. And then half an hour later, I got a phone call telling me that one of my childhood friends had died of COVID in the UK at my age.
Wow.
And he had no prior health issues. That day, I was so happy and so excited about what we were doing on Malta together. I've been so full of things. And I remember just coming out of my room, turning around and saying, I'm really, getting a buzz out of what we're doing here. I feel like we're doing some good and everything else. And the next minute was this huge sadness that just suddenly came over. This huge moment of, that we are actually in a situation that it's just something that, for 100 years, nobody's seen. And it has been seen before. Back in 1919, people saw the same thing with the Spanish flu. But, we haven't seen this type of situation for a century. And, I think that when you go through those moments, and I think you just have to work through them and then try and wake up the next day and get positive again and pick yourself up. You have to remember to call the loved ones who have been affected by that and to deal with that and to give them as much support as possible. But you have to understand there's going to be ups and downs in every day.
I think one of the things that is hurting people at the moment most is just, from a business owner's perspective, getting to the point where you're going to have to let people go, getting to the point where you're going to have to, change people's salaries, and knowing that behind every person there's a human reality, right? People pay rent, people have families, people have. How do you have any tips around that, around taking very difficult decisions as a business owner?
Yeah, I think one of the tips I would give is to be a little bit patient if you can. I think that all of us will have to, if this goes on a long time, to let go of people, to reduce salaries. I think that we need to work with our employees to let them. I mean, one thing that is very important from an employee perspective is that, when you're an employee, the majority of employees, if they haven't got other investments out there, will actually at the moment be spending less than they normally spend. So they're not going out to dinner, they're not going on holidays, they're actually spending, their actual consumption today is less. So in a way, they're able to get put away a little bit more. Now, obviously, as an employer, you have zero income coming in at this moment in time, and you're still having to pay people. So it's quite important to be able to talk to the people and let them understand their situation and your situation, and to understand that balance. And I think this is the all in the boat thing that needs to be, same boat thing that needs to be understood by employees. And you have to turn around and say, look, I need you to share some of this pain. And, that I've got financial issues here and everything else, and we're all going to have to take a little bit. I think by also by being patient, you'll see other people out there as a business owner, you'll see other people out there taking more drastic action. So when you're actually out there taking action, people understand that they've seen their friends go through everything else, and it's actually easier for them to do rather than you being the first to actually go in and do everything. So I think the important thing is to communicate with people, to let them understand your situation, to let them understand that, your business, for example, my business in Thailand, I have, once we've lost our last clients who are in there, we're going to have, nearly 200,000 a month in outgoings and, and zero a month in income. Now, it's fairly obvious that we have to change the situation. There, we're getting no help from the government at all. So it's fairly obvious that we have to speak to employees and say, look, this is the situation. Things are going to have to change. This is what the situation is going to be this month. I can't promise you it's not going to change next month, but to allow people to understand things and to let people to get with it. But we have to sit down and explain things and get their empathy. And I think that's the most important thing.
Pete, I know we've just got 5 minutes left. Guys, if you're watching and you have any questions you'd like to get answered by any of these great guests, please do. We're watching the comments come in, so feel free to ask a question. But Pete, I'd like to get your perspective on this point as well, right? How do you create empathy or transparency or minimize the risks? I mean, Mark was talking about waiting. I know some businesses believe that these things need to be done quickly now to be able to save, staff in the long run, or to save the business itself in the long run. We had some guests on COVID earlier this week who said the same thing. How do you view these difficulties?
Well, I mean, definitely Mark is right in terms of, communicating with your staff, communicating. I mean, these are the guys who are, if there's a fix, these are the guys who are going to get you out of it, So at the end of the day, we set up our businesses with people that we trust, because we trust them and we want to move forward with them. And I have spoken to so many different CEOs and so many different business leaders over the last couple of weeks, whose biggest pain is watching, them having to do some drastic measures to see what they're going to be able to do to keep the business alive. And sometimes it feels like you're on the Titanic and you're trying to decide who goes on the lifeboat and who doesn't, and it is a really, really tough decision to take. I think the truth is that, in all honesty, you need to be as open and as direct with your staff, with your leadership team. You've got to make the sacrifices that need to be done. And unless you protect the whole collective, it's going to be very, very hard to protect anyone. It's easier to protect the collective if you're still in business than if you go bankrupt. And I think that is a very harsh reality that we're all dealing with right now. And obviously, it's not something which anybody wants to go to. And especially, it's something that, a lot of us in the business world have been predicting a slowdown for the last couple of months. And so we all knew that something was coming, but nobody could have predicted how gigantic this tsunami, could have ever been. And it's something that the whole world is going to. So it's not as if we can say, there's that industry and that industry, and we can wait for this. And, even if Malta fixes itself within the next couple of weeks, we're not going to be able to open up our borders anytime, soon. So this is, a matter of the whole chain. I think all I can say is, we need to be mindful that these are, people like you and I, and we need to be mindful of the fact that, everybody has had their hopes and dreams, and that we need to start, believing in every sense of human dignity that we have, to make sure that whatever decision we take, we're taking it for the right reasons. I read a quote, yesterday of Nelson Mandela, and the whole point was, take decisions based on your hope as opposed to your fears. You know what I mean? Because otherwise... But the reality is, some of those fears are real, and unless people take quick decisions, they're not going to be in a position to take any other decision in the future.
Emma,
so it's
if I can, thanks for that, Pete. I think that was really insightful as well. Emma, obviously, listening to Pete and listening to Mark, myself, you can tell as well that there is that business owners are obviously heartbroken by the situation that they're faced with, and there's obviously going to be as well a lot of feelings of guilt, right? There's going to be a lot of feelings of like Pete was saying, choosing someone to save and someone not, how and I'm sure health workers are also dealing with a lot of difficult decisions and feelings as well. How do you manage guilt how do you process these sort of things?
How do you process the decision making or the guilt specifically?
The guilt around the decision making, I guess.
That's a good question. I'd say like speak to your mentors, speak to people you trust, process it so that you don't stay alone with it. You know, when you stay alone with it, you get lost. There's no perspective, you know, and then the guilt can intensify. You know, this is such a new situation, and you want to make sure that you're making decisions that are in alignment with your values still, that you're not just responding from a space of fear and panic. You know, if you're responding from a space of fear, prefrontal cortex is switched off, you're not thinking in a compassionate way, you're not thinking about the collective. You know, the way both Pete and Mark have been speaking is about working with the people around you, being resourceful, but also not playing like, you know, you've got it all like on your own. Like, it's about really working with your team. So yeah, you use your resources, talk to the people around you.
Yeah, and also like be really sure about your decisions and make them sort of grounded in
who you are and what matters to you, your values, and your long-term vision for your business still within the context.
So guys, thank you very much for that. I just want to ask you all one quick fire question before we go, maybe leave this on a more positive note. I want to know the one most positive thing you've taken from this experience so far, or maybe something that you think we should really continue as a world or as a country or as individuals based on these new habits that we're forming. I'm going to start with you, Pete, something positive to close the show.
Well, I think you know, we do need to work, as the title says, find inspiration, you know, in the stuff that we're seeing around us. And I'm seeing, you know, such great ideas coming from people like Mark and Emma, you know, and what we could be doing right now. And I think Mark said it best, you know, and it's a shitstorm, but we're going to get over it. You know, it's going to pass, and one day we're going to be looking back and say, just remember that stage when I thought it was the end of everything. You know, we didn't lose it all. It was just another good episode. I mean, I was trying to convince my daughter to keep a diary of what's going on, and you know, in a couple of years' time, it'll be like, you know, think back about those moments when we weren't sure if we had stuff or enough toilet paper to fill. You know what I mean?
Emma, what about you? Something positive that you've taken from this experience, or that you want to last from this experience?
Well, earlier I mentioned sadness, you know, and somebody commented and said, like, how is feeling sad ever nice? And basically, for me, the niceness that comes from sadness is that when we experience sadness, it's such a, all the emotions are universal, but it's one that really connects you to your fellow human being. And so one positive thing that's coming out of this for me is like more and more compassion, you know, I just like, it connects us.
Mark, what about you? Something positive or lasting from this crisis?
I think it's within all of us to have something positive out of this. I think that the first thing is the realization that although this is terrible, this has happened time and time again in history, and that this is not something that is just terrible because it's happened to us. I think that we lived in a golden world from 1945 to 2020, 75 years without world wars, without major viruses like this going around. But remember, before that was tons of wars, people having to go over the, you know, as infantry, having to go and throw themselves over and be shot to death. People going through the Spanish flu where 30 to 50 million people died. So we have to, first of all, just take that realization that this is part of life. And what we have to do is understand that part of life is that it's not always going to be great. So what we have to do is say, but what is the positive we can get out of this? I am going to fill my time in this few months and make sure I spend at least a couple of hours a day doing something positive, learning, gaining something, learn a new skill, looking for something new for my business, looking something new for myself, so that I come out of this a person who is stronger and more adept and ready to go once we got the new world in front of us.
Yeah. Thank you very, very much for that. I think in general, realizing that, coming to the core of what's the meaning of life, right? As in when you're forced to stop, the rat race and just thinking about things like money and things like that, and keeping yourself busy, you start to get to the core of what would you do with your time if you didn't have to work? What would you do with your time if you were just at home for 2 or 3 weeks? So yeah, I think that's been really nice to have you all on the show. Pete, thank you very much for your insight. Emma, all your practical advice and the help you're doing with your clients as well. Mark Weingard, good work on Malta together. And thank you very much for being with us on the show as well.
Thank you too, Chris.
Thank you. So guys, thanks again for watching. COVID Calls is coming at you once a day with a lot of interesting guests to try and process this reality that we're all experiencing. Today we had some inspiration about dealing with crises and overcoming that. If you're going through any particular issues or you want to join the conversation on COVID Calls, feel free to send me an email on chris@lovinmalta.com. We'll see about getting you on the show as well. And that's all for today. Have a good afternoon and stay safe, as we say nowadays.